Hello and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Today we welcomed on Martin Hindmarch onto the show. He's the Operations Excellence Leader at Cummins Engines. I love this episode. It was almost like getting back to the basics of what the podcast was. We started just absolute core management leadership. We talked about his early career, starting in Komatsu 1989, right the way through to spending 16 years where he currently is at Cummins Engines. And the key core of it, despite being obviously leadership and management and what that means, being a vulnerable leader, being a new age leader, and this generation, and the difference, if you like, of what a manager was perhaps 20 years ago to what they are today. But the bulk of the episode was really learning on the principles and values and structure that Cummins have got now and how they've enabled them to have people like Martin who have been there 16, 20, 30, 40 years in the business. And that's not by chance. That's something they've worked at as a business. And we really dig deep into that so people listening can really understand and take some of those lessons into their current business and their current team. So that was an overriding theme about training, about progression, about continuous improvement. It's a real core, this one, for, I guess, your engineers and your operations management as people who are passionate about 5S and waste reduction, that type of thing. But this is hopefully going to appeal to any leaders or managers out there. Really enjoyed it, and you're going to learn a lot from Martin. So please watch or listen, whatever you want to do. If you wouldn't mind, please helping me promote the show. We're nearly up to 50 episodes now, which is incredible. Really means a lot to me if you subscribe to the show on whatever channel you watch or listen to, and hopefully push to get some guests just like Martin. So thank you so much. Sit back, hope you enjoy. Take care. Excellent stuff. So a warm welcome today to Martin Hindmarch, who's the Operations Excellence Leader at Cummins Engines. So Martin, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mark. Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good man. Excellent. Right. Kick off for the same question every week. So Martin, what does it mean to you to be a leader?
To be a leader, I think for me, it's a bit of a privilege. I would sort of summarize it as. I'll apologize now if I keep coming because I've got a little bit of a cold going on as well. But it's a privilege because you're in a position, I suppose, where people are sort of looking up to you to a certain degree, but they're looking towards you to try and guide them and help them and coach them. Yeah. So to me, it's that. But I think leadership. I mean, I've listened to a few of these podcasts now as well, and there's a common theme that runs through them all. And I think everybody's of the same sort of opinion. It's you have to inspire people in the first instance, because you need to have a team that wants to be with you and wants to do what you want to do. They can understand your vision that you've got. What's the end game? And understand that if you hit hard times or some troubles, you've got something in the back of your mind, or you've got a direction you're going to follow, and they need to trust you in that. So trust's a big thing as part of a leader. You need to have people to trust you, to buy into your brand, if you like. Yeah. And that's a big part about it.
Yeah, no, I comment.
Yeah, well, the coaching side, I mean, that's another element. So, as part of the trust, if you can coach people, and take them on board and do like the mentoring piece, that's another key element. And I've had people who's worked for me in the past, and I've mentored them through various stages of, the development, from working on the shop floor, coming through to sort of leadership positions, and then even moving on, into company, within Cummins, going to like different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And it's that side of the things where it means a lot for me as a leader. And I think it will be the same for any leader, that you can see sort of, that mentoring has helped someone out, and it's got them into a position similar to what you're in, and hopefully that's rubbed off, and they can do the same type of things for someone else.
I love that.
So
and yeah, which do you think out of that? Because they're all different. What you're talking about there, they're all almost different traits of being a good manager or a leader. The trust piece, the mentoring piece. Which for you and the inspiration piece. Which for you is the part that you feel, people talk now a lot about being in flow and just being in there. You love what you're doing and you're good at what you do, but you're challenging yourself. Which part of that do you think works best and sort of coincides with your values, would you say?
I think I think the trust side of it, definitely getting people to trust you, but then I think being self-aware as well, and
Okay.
even being vulnerable
Yeah.
with the team. So if you've got people sort of reporting to you, or you're leading them through various aspects of the business, I think if you try and stand aside or stand above them and say, well, I'm the leader, this is what we're doing, follow me regardless, you lose it a little bit. Being open enough to be able to stand up and say, yeah, I've made a mistake here, you were right, and being that, showing that vulnerable side and taking on board what their views are and changing direction if that's what's justified, then I think that's a key part of it. Not to be one of the standalone people of like, yeah, I'm a leader, which I think goes back to sort of how management and leadership's developed. Like if you go back sort of when I started, like back in the 80s and probably 70s and 60s, further back than that, managers were managers. And it was a case of, this is what we're doing. You do what I tell you. Don't question us because I know best,
Yeah.
regardless of what the outcome was. It could have been a disaster. If it was a disaster, then it was the team that was blamed. If it was a success, the manager took the glory. And I think that's changed now. We've moved away from that. And it's sort of the adage I was sort of given, and sort of it makes sense to a certain degree. Managers manage things, so machinery, processes, that's where a manager's in there. A leader leads people, so it's two distinctions. You can be a good manager, you might not be a good leader. It's the interpersonal skills. And a lot of it, you get buzzwords constantly, don't you? So like all of this emotional intelligence, that's like a big one now.
Yeah.
But it's right insofar as, I've worked for some good leaders, and I've, within the business now in Cummins, we've got some really strong leaders. And that emotional intelligence piece sort of clicks because you have to read the room. You have to understand what people are thinking, how they're feeling. Are they working the same way as they normally work? Is something going on that's different? And it's them triggers you need to try and be tuned into. And I think it comes with time. And it's a skill that you have to develop and you have to try and sort of get to grips with to be a good leader.
Is that the emotional intelligence piece? Is that something you think is more instinct, or is that trainable to be able to pick those up?
I would say, just as a ballpark, I would say it's around about a 60-40 split.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's instinct.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got to have it sort of inbuilt to have that sort of empathy, if you like, to be able to pick up on things.
Yeah.
If you haven't got that side of, or that empathetic side, it's very difficult to sort of train someone to pick up on the signals. You can, you can go through training courses, you can go through development areas where you can say, someone can stand up in front of a class and tell you, look for these triggers, this is the type of things. But unless you've got sort of a little bit of inbuilt, it's very difficult, I think, to pick that one up.
I think it's almost harder now to be a leader, because I completely agree with everything you've said there. And back in the day, it never was this thing. You were just the leader of people. You did what they said. So
Yeah.
But now you've got to be, emotional intelligence has got to be paramount. You've got to listen to people. You've got to be there for them. Obviously, mental health is now a big part of leadership and management. People now expect managers to be much more transparent, to hold their hands up, all these things we're talking about. So if you think about it, it's a much bigger job than it used to be in a way, isn't it?
It's massive. And I think, like you say, I mean, when I go back to the other point, so managers managing machinery and processes, easy in a certain respect, because you know what the process should be, you manage it against that process, know what the machine's capable of. When it's coming to a leader with people, you're not always sure what the person's capable of. You're not always sure of how they're going to react, or how they're going to work, or how they're going to do certain things. And that's where it becomes very difficult. And that's why I think, like I say, leadership, I think it was there was a study done, sort of like and there's always been a debate over this term of he's a born leader, or
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're a natural born leader. And it's, there's a recent study that's been done, and it sort of suggests that 30% sort of genetic, built in, like a leadership sort of slant, if you like. 70% of it's learned. So similar, like with the emotional intelligence piece, I think there's more inbuilt from that side than being learned. But then when it comes to being a leader, you have to have some of it in you, but not always. You can learn a big portion of that side of things. But it's a lot more difficult, you're right now, to sort of be in the framework as being a leader, because everyone's, like you say, they're looking to you. You've got to be transparent. You've got to get the trust. You've got to be able to read the room. And business has changed. The way we do things has changed. So the leadership role has to adapt and evolve. It's not it's a bit cliched, but it's not a destination, it's a journey. Because you're constantly evolving. You have to keep changing your mindset. You have to keep changing, what's the latest sort of topics. Like you mentioned there, mental health, big one. Like if you go back, 10 years, wasn't really talked about, wasn't really a big thing. Now it's at the forefront. And a lot of the big companies, Cummins is one that they're really big, and a big advocate of like mental health, and it's okay campaigns, and we get a lot of information, we get a lot of support on that side of things, along with others. So to be a leader now, you have to be thinking of all these different aspects: development, staff development. How do we develop them? How do we stretch them enough to make it interesting for them, but not too far so that they get too stressed? And you've just got to adapt, constantly adapt. And I think it's part of the emotional intelligence piece and understanding the team piece. I've always done it sort of, throughout me sort of management or leadership career and things like that. When I've had teams working for us, people say, well, how do you manage people, or how do you deal with different people in the room? You're always different. And I think you've got to adapt your style to depending on who you're talking to, because of the way people react and the way people respond. So I haven't got like a management style, or I don't think I have, and I've been told I haven't, a management style where it's sort of across the board. Everybody gets spoke to the same way, and et cetera, et cetera. I tend to sort of look, watch, listen, pick up on things, and then tailor the way I either approach the person, talk to the person, got to try and understand what makes them tick, what sort of like triggers them, all these different elements, which, to your point, a leader role now is just, it's all of this that you have to try and consider.
And how much of that, Mike, would you say is, for example, a leader might be sat, and Cummins are an example, and we'll talk soon about Cummins in terms of, you've been there since 2007, and the amount of leaders that have come out of there. There might be other leaders working for perhaps an SME who may not have the same sort of structure and opportunities and training. How much responsibility do you think it is of the business to get someone to be that level versus someone who, what percentage of proactiveness do they need to have, I guess, to go, no, actually, I need to read this book. I need to go on this, that type of stuff. What needs to come from them as well, would you say?
I think, again, it's down to the individuals. I mean, you're definitely right. The business, really, if the business wants to sort of take things seriously and develop, the future managers, the future leaders of, the company, of the departments, or whatever it might be, there's quite an onus on the company to try and develop those people and trying to give them the skills to be able to do that. And there's massive benefits for the company to do that. If you don't, then you run the risk of attrition. So people who want to go and do that good job, they're going to leave. If you don't support them in that and you don't give them the avenues to develop. But I think from what you're talking about, I would say, like, if you try to split it down, I would say around about 50-50. 50% responsibility of the individual to try and develop themselves and push on. 50% from the company. But I suppose it depends how much you really want to do it. That might change sort of how much effort someone would want to put into it. Because likewise, if the company don't back it, that person might start losing interest in being a leader and just sort of drift off into doing, something along, a side move, or just, go back to doing what they were doing beforehand.
Yeah, I guess the point is it's got to be a dual partnership, hasn't it? It can't just be one. You can't just expect your business to do everything.
No.
Or you've got to do something for yourself at the same time. Business is much support. We held a HR roundtable event of the week actually, and one of the ladies there, and they talked about retention and recruitment and how you can help that. And they had a great piece actually where they use their levy to essentially get people through either management apprenticeships, or engineering apprenticeships. So actually they go to their sort of semi-skilled staff or the operation staff and help them organically get promoted within the business and help them train. I thought that's a great idea because not everyone wants to be a manager. Some people want to be engineers or whatever that will be, finance or anything. But it's but they're using that scheme, which is cost effective, but they're actually creating managers in the business, whether that be, level 3 ILM or whatever it is. It's a stepping stone to a management course, which I thought was a great idea.
It's brilliant, and there's a lot of resource and funding and backing and everything out there to try and upskill people now.
Yeah,
there's avenues. I had a meeting last week with Paul from the Northeast Automotive Alliance, and they're saying there's a big pot of money what can be allocated for development, for projects, for investment, and all that stuff, and it's all good stuff to do. Because you're right what you're saying. People, they might not want to develop into managers or leaders. They might want to go and do engineering roles. Yeah. But then they might do an engineering role and think, actually, you know what, I could be a leader in this engineering department.
Yeah.
And then they'll naturally come into the management role or the leadership role purely based on what their experiences have been.
100%, completely agree. We've kind of, I guess, skimmed past how you got to where you are. And, you're 2007, joining Cummins, where you are now. Is just briefly before that, did you always think you were going to be in a position like this? We talk about that percentage of your 30%, which you're born with management. Do you think you were born with less or more, would you say?
I think there was an element in there.
Yeah.
Just from going back even through sort of leaving school, playing rugby, a little bit of like a leadership sort of trait coming out of like organising people and stuff like that. And I found people would respond to what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, yeah, there's a bit there. Yeah. But coming out of school in like sort of early days, never in, a million years was I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to leave school and I'm going to be a manager and I'm going to be a leader and all the rest of it. So in build, I think I was confident enough, if you like, to be in that sort of realm. But it wasn't something that was on the radar typically.
What would you put your success down to then? Something like to say, it's the main reason.
I would say, for me, it's just being determined and sort of wanting to do something that I want to do.
Yeah.
So developing myself, basically.
Right.
Because I say, I started off from school, not like even thinking about being a leader. I was more one of the lads, just wanted to be, this is me, I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But as things progressed, I could see the benefits of what I was doing, and I could see the benefits of the development I could do, the training, the qualifications, the courses and all the rest of it. But then ultimately, I suppose it was like you get a bit of a buzz of like achieving goals and having a successful team behind you and getting the team recognition of, we've done X, Y, or Z. So that sort of drove us then to sort of say, well, I want to develop this a bit further and I want to get a bit further on in my career and see where that takes us, really.
100%. And lucky enough to find yourself a business like Cummins, and there aren't many companies like them. Do you know what I mean? Like, and, reputation-wise, huge business, but that doesn't size doesn't necessarily mean reputation every time, but they've always had an excellent reputation. You don't need to work in manufacturing to know who Cummins are, particularly if you're if you're local to North East or local to Darlington. Was it obvious from the start that you were going to stay there for a long time? You saw that path, or what do they do to keep people there, would you say? Because they've got a history of people who've been there for a long time.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and you're right. I mean, 16 year with Cummins is like, it's a long time.
Yeah.
In the scheme of things, but to your point, there's a lot of people who's been here 35 year, 40 year, and plus. And reputation is one thing. So you know Cummins for what it is. It's a global company. It's in various parts of the world. There's a lot of development and different avenues you can explore within Cummins. But sort of from a retention perspective, you are looked after, and it is a good company. It's got a good reputation for it. As an employer, sort of the right environment perspective, we've got key processes within our operations excellence framework, and one of them is sort of having the right environment. So, like on site, you've got good facilities on site. You've got good access to occupational health avenues. You've got gym on site that you can use. Lots of different benefits like that, and even come to the summer times, bit recognition. They have big barbecues on for all 3 shifts. So through the summer, you have barbecues. There's a lot of big benefits to being within the company. And when you're here and doing a good job, they look after you. And I think that goes a long way to how they retain a lot of people. Having that reputation, but having that viewpoint of being, it's like a family affair, if you like. Once you're here, you get looked after. All I expect is you come in and do a good job, and that's the top and bottom of it.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast for a very quick 30-second pitch of my business. Theo James are a specialist manufacturing and engineering recruitment search firm based in Seaham in the North East. If you're looking for any staff or a new opportunity yourself, from a semi-skilled level right the way up to C-suite executive, then please get in touch. We have a specialist consultant in each discipline ready to help. I'm extremely proud of what we've built over the years, and I'd love to extend that service out to you. Thank you. Enjoy the podcast. And it seems that if I look at people who work for Cummins, they seem to have a nice, organic, obvious promotion. There's a plan there, and I'm guessing that doesn't happen by chance. Does it feel very sort of process driven, and someone could come in and very easy for you to sell the future, I guess, for someone wanting to work for you?
Yeah, without a doubt. And we've got a lot of performance, classed as performance management, but it's sort of like your development, your career development. So every year we do like sort of a talent management assessment. We have regular one-to-ones with like peers and managers, and we go through sort of like, what are your expectations? And you can put in, within the system, you can put in all your aspirations, your mobility preferences. Are you happy just to stay in Darlington? Yeah. Do you want to move elsewhere in the UK to one of our other plants? Are you happy to move worldwide to go to one of the other plants? So they're very good at pulling this information together to see who wants to do what type of work, what areas do you want to work in? Do you want to change departments and go and work somewhere else? So we'll have things like red days where you can submit a request to say, I want to go and work in the engineering department for a day. See what that's like. So you can get that understanding. Is it something for you? Is it not? And that goes across all different departments. So there is a very good career progression route. They also look for high potentials. So people who they know can fast track through the business and fast track into different areas. And it's very good at identifying that level of detail. Who wants to do what? How good are they? Have they got the capabilities? Have they got gaps in that capability that they need to fill to get them to that role? So they'll set a plan out for the next 5 year, 6 year, maybe less. What you need to do is spend time in this department, get experience of that. Go to that department, get experience of that. That'll get you to what you need to be to become the next plant manager, the next engineering manager, or whatever it might be.
Okay.
So it is very structured. And, I am fortunate to be in this business, and anybody who else is in this business is fortunate to be in like a large, global company that can offer that type of progression or promotion activities.
Love that, because I think often people think they're stuck doing what they're doing and they haven't got experience to do it. So they're not going to get another job somewhere else doing it because they've not got the experience to get through the interview. But I imagine you get that loyalty back because you give people those opportunities. Have you seen that work in practice then? People go, I fancy going in this department and spend the day there. Do you see that quite a bit?
Yeah, it happens quite often. I mean, even now we've got people who are just on secondment. So they'll do a 6-month secondment into that area, whether it's within safety or engineering. And they'll work alongside the engineers or the whoever else is in that department, get a feel for it. They might come back to the original role, ultimately saying, yeah, when there's an opportunity comes up, I want to move in to do that. Sometimes if a role appears and they're doing a good job, it's like, do you want to make it a permanent arrangement? And then, they transfer and do that. And likewise, like I say, I've had people who's developed from sort of shop floor to team leader, who's then went on to relocate to the US to become an ops manager across at one of the American plants.
Really?
And that's how, that's how it can progress quite easily throughout the business. If you're willing to put in the work, identify the gaps in sort of your performance, well, not your performance, but what areas you need to understand, bridge those gaps, and then the next step is to move into the role that you want to go into.
That's brilliant. If you were suddenly, obviously you won't be, but if you were suddenly working for another company and they are an SME, let's just say there's 250, 300 employees. Yeah. They don't have a lot of what's set up at Cummins. Let's say your role is to come in and to try and implement. They're having real big issues with retention, recruitment.
Yeah,
you can't do everything because you haven't got the budget for it. But the things you've seen in the last 16 years, what do you think are the things that a company could implement, which isn't going to cost them millions of pounds to do, which will help that?
Yeah, I think that the biggest sort of quick hit or quick win for any business to try and implement would be recognition. Sort of either a recognition scheme, or some way of identifying people who are doing a good job, recognizing them. I mean, it doesn't have to be like big bucks. It can be, a voucher for somewhere, or even a meal in the canteen, which is even from a big company like this, we can just say, right, somebody's done a good job. There's a voucher for the canteen. Go and get your dinner and something to drink and whatever. Thanks very much. It's £4.50 or whatever it is. It's nothing in the scheme of things. So a lot of even smaller companies can adopt things like that, where you're giving something back to them and recognizing, we haven't got a big budget here, but there's a little something to say thank you. Even a letter, just something to say, you've done a really good job, really appreciate what you're doing. Thanks very much. Goes a long way to sort of building those bridges and trying to get that sort of buy-in from the teams as well, That's definitely one thing. And another thing to look at is trying to give the teams a little bit of, you could say, a responsibility or autonomy even, to say, look, we've got a problem here. Let's get everybody together, get them to sort of engage with the process. Let them feel part of the business as opposed to just somebody who's picking a paycheck up at the end of the week and, they turn up, they do the job and they go home. That their key things, recognition and getting people to feel part of the business, is the two main ones I would have said.
Yeah, love that. And cost nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, cost you £5 here and there. But I agree. These are the things that I see.
Back in response to that, if you look at it as sort of like a return on investment thing, it's good. You couldn't get that from any other like sort of bank, really. You're getting good return on it.
Yeah, and that's why people stay, because they feel valued, and that's why people leave, because they're not. Simple as that.
Yeah.
One of the things I know you're passionate about is continuous improvement and that element of it. I imagine that's something that's played a big part in the roles the last 16 years. Where's that come from? Is that something inbuilt, or is that something you've implemented? Or
to be honest, it's a little bit inbuilt. So some people might say I'm a little bit OCD on certain things, which is maybe it could be a true reflection. I've always been sort of the mindset of how we do it now isn't always the best way to do it. It's not always like, the way to do it in the future. There's always got to be some changes. And I think it started when when I went to Komatsu. And working in Komatsu, Japanese culture, you have a lot of the Japanese sort of methodologies of 5S, Kaizen, quality circle, that type of stuff. And it's, their culture is very much inbuilt of, making improvements. And when I first saw it and first experienced it within that, I was like, well, all this work just to like save half a minute on that, what's the point? And it's not until you start getting more involved in it and looking at it more and more that you see the actual benefits it can have. So I think that's where it sort of stemmed from. And it's a big part of what I do now. So as part of the ops X leader for the campus, it's looking at where have we got gaps, identifying what are the wastes. Because the biggest thing to business and the biggest crippler to your productivity and your effectivity is waste. The more waste you can strip out of your process, the better it is. Because you've got your value added work that you're getting paid to do. You don't want to be doing work that you're not getting paid to do or getting any benefit from. So I think that's where sort of the continuous improvement piece came in. I could see the benefits straight away, and then using the 5S sort of methodology, it sort of fitted in with me OCD, if you like. So it was a case of that's a bit of me, that, so I can organise that into that place. Even on my desk when I come in, it's like, yeah, my mouse is there, that's there. Everything's set up when I come in on the morning and things. But so I think, like, to your point, it is inbuilt a certain degree, but then a lot of it, comes down to training. So I've had a lot of, external training and, training courses on 5S and on site now. So I deliver 5S training, which I've rolled out across the site. I've also do value stream transformation training, which looks at wastes and how do we improve things. So it fits in quite well with what I'm doing. So I've had sort of me working background and then the management leadership background, and then it's sort of the next step. So I'm sort of still like leading things and sort of guiding the operating team within the site of this is where you need to concentrate on. Let's pull teams together and get that done.
Love that. So same question then. You're in your new role. They haven't a clue about 5S, country improvement. They've done nothing before. What are the first two things that you do in first 2 months to sort of get them on that journey, would you say? Or even the first week when you're looking around, you're walking around, what's the low-hanging fruit?
Low-hanging fruit, believe it or not, 5S is the first one to hit. If you can start looking at 5S and introducing sort of, the full 5S process, if you like, you'll hit any amount of low-hanging fruit, all your wastes, all your layout problems, identifying things that are wrong, that shouldn't be there. Hit that first, and then moving on from that, it's educating people about the wastes. It's like, there's a book that I've read through, and it's part of sort of the lean activities, is learning to see. And that's when, people come into a business, and even now I can do the same. I can walk around this shop floor or office area or anywhere like that, and I'll pass things, and it looks immaculate. A lot of the areas are really good, but we can have visitors in from either other plants or other areas or just out external from Cummins. And I always ask them, like, as we're walking around or if we're doing courses or whatever, when you're out there, just flag anything that you see. If you see something where you think it's a waste, or if you think it's something that's a safety issue, flag it, because you become blind to it. And that's where sort of like this book, or the term learning to see, once you can start getting people to look and identify what's the 7 wastes, what we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, how do we get rid of that? That'll be, massive benefits, and that's your low-hanging fruit that you need to go after.
And I like the fact that you're involved with them as well in that process. So the changes you make off the back of what they've seen, I imagine it's a double whammy, that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like you say, you become blind to it. You see it, you're there like on a daily basis,
Yeah, love that. Excellent stuff. Perfect. I normally ask in terms of manufacturing and the challenges it's got, which we can talk about. But I'm almost keen to sort of flip it. You've been in manufacturing a long time now. There's various changes and there's various challenges that we're kind of aware of. What do you think's the exciting, the positive stuff about manufacturing moving forward for the next sort of 5, 10, 15 years? Where do you things go? Where do you see things going, which is going to add value to industry, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's lots, everything's developing. I mean, specifically for our business at the moment, and a lot of other businesses, environmental aspects of, everything that's going on in the world now have a bearing on a lot of the businesses, that we interact with and others interact with. So you've got a lot of the emissions regulations, particularly for Cummins, and automotive manufacturers and things like that. There's massive challenges around sort of how do we deal with it. We've got the government guidelines of, they want to ban all diesel engines by 2050, and there's some very strict and very hard targets to try and hit. Cummins themselves, like I say, they've got the Planet 2050 goals of like being getting the emissions right down, and that includes our products. So we're developing products for sort of like the future emissions regulations. So like the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What does that look like? And there's a lot of work getting done. There's a lot of changes in there where, diesel might still be there to a certain degree, but then you've got a lot of, exciting new technology like hydrogen coming on stream. The company's doing a lot of work in the hydrogen space. For manufacturing, there's a lot of fuel cell manufacturers springing up and expanding. A lot of businesses are expanding into that sort of portfolio. So there's a lot more manufacturing sort of possibilities and challenges coming up. Yeah. And it's sort of a double-edged sword, I think, because it's going to generate more opportunity for people to get into manufacturing and engineering in particular.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is we seem to be moving away from the engineering and manufacturing skill set. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of other businesses like sort of models, and you've got your call centers, you've got a lot of like other things what are taking the manufacturing element away. Yeah. Which means talent coming through the pipeline, it's getting less and less. So the businesses are all competing for the same talent, trying to advertise and recruit people. It's getting less and less of experienced people. So I think a big challenge for manufacturing, for all manufacturing, is keeping people interested in manufacturing and engineering. How do we do that? And again, at Cummins, we do a lot of work in the schools with STEM projects,
right? Trying
to get people in. We bring schools on site to show them what we're doing with like robotics, like sort of the industry 4.0 element, which is like the next big thing. Yep. How do we automate things? How do we have, we've got vehicles going around the lines now delivering products which are autonomous. They get programmed and away they go. So there's a lot of new technology coming through, which we're trying to tap into the schools and, the school pupils and future engineers trying to tap into that and say, look, this is how exciting it's getting. There's a lot of technology involved. Use your academic side to try and get into the engineering piece. It's all about promoting it because there is a lot of challenges coming at the business and businesses worldwide now because of the global climate, and there's a big push for change.
But it is so exciting. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think if I'd seen that sort of stuff as a kid, like particularly walking around a factory like Cummins and seeing the automation and robotics, I'd be in awe. And there are good companies doing some great stuff with STEM and all the school sides, but they need to be met halfway with the government and the curriculum, because they've got young people now coding, which is great for the tech industry. It's perfect, because they're going to need people in that industry. But are they even aware of at that age what skills that they need?
That's exactly it. And then you've got to think of it like the coding element. Uh-huh. Because everything that's technology based now, there's coding involved, and there's a lot of that, understanding how to put the strings together and all the rest of it. But if you come into engineering now, we've got controls engineers who have to code
Yeah.
robots, that have to code programs. So it's tying the two together. It's not just all about gaming and doing all of this other good stuff.
Yeah.
You can actually use that in an engineering background
Yeah.
and do the same type of thing.
Absolutely.
We're trying to switch them onto that so we can fill the pipeline with talent to come and backfill the gaps that we're going to have.
It's the only way. Otherwise, all I see is the UK fall behind because we just need that pipeline, that stream of talent coming through. Girls and boys, and also it's massive. So, I completely agree. And I like it's a good balance there with how positive it is as well, because there is so much good stuff coming in the industry, and if we can try to meet those battles head on, I think we'll be in a brilliant place as a region, as a sector, as a country. So perfect stuff. I've got some quick fire questions, Martin, which I haven't sent you, I don't think. So you've got no idea about these. Who was the best manager you've ever had and why?
Best manager. Ooh. There's a few names, but there's one that sort of springs to mind when I joined Cummins. So when I joined Cummins, I worked on this campus in Darlington. It's split into two areas, or two main areas. You've got the engine business that produces the engines, and then you've got the emissions business, which looks after all the after treatments, so the exhaust, the dosing systems and things. And I worked for the engine business for about 4 years,
right,
before moving to the emissions business as ops manager. And then I was working for the plant manager at the time, so directly into him. And I learned quite a lot from him. So he was a different management style, a different leadership style than I've ever had. And that's where I sort of picked up on not so much the laid back element, but he was very calm, methodical. A lot of managers and leaders I had before that could be all right, but then they could flip, and it was like, "Ooh, it's all gone Pete Tong here," and everybody's running about scattered trying to do things. Whereas when I went to work for CES, like again, he was called Martin, so it must be a trait. But he was very methodical and calm and laid back. And it was always mentioned, as part of a leader or leadership, things like, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Why do you think that is? It's like, well, it keeps you balanced, and you look stupid, or so you listen more than you talk. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Take everything in first before you speak. Listen, and it's sort of stuck, and you think, well, yeah, actually, it makes a lot of sense, you know what I mean? And that's why, going back to my earlier points, you've got to understand the room. You've got to, by listening, understanding, what makes people tick, how do they work, what influences them, what sort of gives them that drive, or what just switches them off. So yeah, and he's retired now, but fair play to him. He did stand out, but there's been some good ones. Yeah. But I think that the main reason for sort of getting into the management piece was bad managers, if I'm being totally honest.
Off the case.
Mm-hmm. They're the people who sort of stick in my mind more because of it probably is how I got into the sort of management piece, was because I was looking at sort of, not in an arrogant way, but things like, I could do that better than that.
Yeah.
You've dealt with that completely wrong. You know what I mean? So, and that sort of spurred us on a little bit, and I thought, well, actually, yeah, I can do better than that. And that, that's why I sort of spurred me into the management piece, if you like.
Like it. Biggest influence from business or entertainment or sporting world, would you say? Anyone that springs to mind?
I wouldn't say there's any particular one person that would spring to mind. I would sort of liken it, or sort of associate it more to one sport, and that's motorbike racing, which is it's a passion of mine. It's like motorbikes, it sort of goes back a long way with us. But when you watch, any competitive sort of racing, so the British Superbikes, World Superbikes, MotoGP, you've got to admire them, and you've got to take something away from how they work and how they operate. So the things like, how precise they need to be, the trust that they have to have in each other, which again, it relates back to a little bit to sort of team dynamics. You know, like how does a team work? You have to trust each other to know who's doing what you're doing is not going to interfere with what they're doing, knock them off course and things. Their attention to detail, and the biggest thing is commitment. So when you look at what they do, they're committed to what, like between them and the bike and at them speeds, particularly when you see a wet race, they're committed. You know, they know what they're doing, they're focused, they're committed. And, you know, it's sort of like having a team game, but with individuals competing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like it a lot. 3 things or words, first thing springs to mind that make up a good leader.
Good leader. Well, I would say empathy, without a doubt. Good communication. And I would say a visionary, because you have to be able to have a view of where you need to be going to and what you need to achieve and translate that back to be able to sell it to the rest of the people, I suppose.
Like it. Excellent. Best book or audio book, podcast you've ever read, listened to, anything that's ever resonated?
There's a couple of books. I mean, I know the Learning to See one is part of the continuous improvement piece, but I think there was one book called Quiet Leadership by David Rock.
Heard that before, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can get around the sort of the Americanized sort of slant to it and things, it was quite good about, you know, getting people or the team to perform without sort of telling them what to do type of thing. So like getting them to think for it, make the decisions. And again, it sort of resonated a little bit with us going back to some of like previous leaders and things where it's sort of, they would always, if I had a problem, it's sort of, well, what would you do? Would, you know, because I think initially everybody goes through the same cycle. When you first become a manager or a leader, it's, oh, what do I do here? And you go and see your next manager or leader and say, I'm stuck with this. What? And, you know, if they tell you what to do, you're not actually physically learning or developing it. Yeah. So some of the better leaders would be, well, what would you do? Yeah. And then when you come up with that answer, then it's, no, have a think of it this way. Or it might be, yeah, exactly, go and do that. And all of it, you know, before long, you start doing it yourself anyway. Like but yeah, so that was quite a decent one. But the other one sort of I went through as well as the 5 dysfunctions of a team, Patrick Lencioni. And that, again, very much team-based, looking at sort of the 5 dysfunctions, really, of, you know, trust or the absence of it, all the way through to not paying attention to the details, if you like. It's a little bit of a storytelling book. You know, it's based around a fictional character and things, but there's some good points to take out of there for anybody thinking of, you know, either running a team, leading a team. There is some good, you know, pieces you can pull out of that to try and help you, if anything.
Like it. And just finally, the classic, but if you could give yourself, going back to day one managing, shall we say, one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Don't do it. No. I think potentially get into it earlier.
Right.
Because, you know, it's been a good career, what I've had all the way through. Like I say, I came out of school, it's sort of like 1983, did a apprenticeship as a panel beater, which I'm sort of trained in, went into manufacturing by accident because it was purely down to money.
Yeah.
So the garage trade was horrendous paid, you know, it was a decent company to work for, but horrendous. Loved the job, got into sort of working at Komatsu on the line, sort of manufacturing. Can still remember that very first week thinking, what have I done here? This is ridiculous. I'll never last working in a factory. I'm used to being out. And then I was there 15 years. So it just shows you, you know, getting into leadership, pick up on it early enough, and it's a great career. So, you know, 30 out of me 40 years working has basically been managing people or leading people. And it's great. You know, it's something to get into.
And I hope it's been a nice reflection for you, thinking, you know, before you came on this about, you know, what you've done, because there's so many lessons that people can take here. Not just from, which it definitely has been an episode, where people can learn from working from a big business like Cummins and what they've done, but also from your management style, your techniques, and don't take for granted that what you've done is by chance, because you've obviously worked at it, and like you say, you've learned from good managers, bad managers, but and I'm sure there'll be people who'll be naming you as their best manager in years to come, because it feels like legacy for you, I imagine, is quite important as well. That
without a doubt, yeah. And in the years, like I'm laughing, but the years people who, like, even now, like in certain areas I go to, it's like, when are you coming back?
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not basically, but yeah, but it is good. And I mean, don't get us wrong, yeah, you get all that and you get all the positive stuff, but there's a flip side, and there's always, like, through management and leadership, you've got to make some challenging decisions, and you've got to make some unpopular decisions, and it's got to be an educated decision that you make, but not everybody's going to like it, and you've got to, you can't take everything to heart when you're making a decision based on what the business needs to do, or what the statistics are telling you. So you do get that side, and hopefully there's more people that think I've influenced them better than there is people that think I haven't. So
no doubt about that. But look, thank you so much. It's been great. So really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks very much for having us. It's been good.